Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's the morning meeting. You missed the pregame show. If you weren't here on the two-way platform, consider joining us here tomorrow. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, no smack in the chat. Peace, love, and understanding to all. Presumption of grace to all. And whether you're watching on those platforms or here on the two-way platform, where you get an opportunity to raise a question, you'll notice we have two great new guest co-hosts today. Familiar faces, the two-way community, but here on this program, joining now, Kristen Davidson, a Republican who is part of a giant consulting conglomerate. It's like the Microsoft of consulting. And Yemisi Egbawale is taking the opposite route. She's a solo practitioner, but both with great experience in politics, government, and everything else. And ladies, couldn't be more excited to have you here. Yemisi, who knows you're on today? Who'd you tell that you're guest co-hosting? Anybody?
I told all of my Signal chats, all my followers.
All right. Well, hopefully they're rooting you on. Kristen, did you tell anybody you're here, or made it a big secret?
I just dropped it into my family chat, so they're all in different time zones. Hopefully they figured it out.
Got it. All right. Well, they can always watch on demand. Of course, you can watch the show on YouTube anytime you want, live or on demand, and listen to it as a podcast. Lots of stories that are carrying through, and of course, we're going to start with the big Tennessee House special result. Again, if you're watching here on the platform, you want to be part of the conversation, we'd welcome your participation. If you've never raised your hand, today's a good day because the opportunity to ask these two women questions is not something most Americans get to do. So please raise your hand if you want to get in on the conversation. Quick word from a sponsor, and then we're going to dive right into the results from that race in Tennessee. Fairway and Green, reminder, I'm wearing one of their products right here. If you want to get something from Fairway and Green for the holidays for people on your list, like Wickham did, go to twoway.tv/fairway. You got about a week to order if you want to make sure you get something embroidered before Christmas. So Fairway, twoway.tv/fairway. Also available to you now at there's a discount on that. What's the discount on that? I got to look that up. Well, you'll see it when you get to the site. But there is a discount. Also a discount on Cozy Earth, 20% off. No, 40% off using the promo code 2WMM. Go to CozyEarth.com, 2WMM for 40% off everything on there. Get gifts for people, the bubble cuddle blanket, buy 10 of them. Cross off 10 people on your list. The bamboo sheets, the pants, the towels. Towels are incredible. You'll just want to sleep with the towels. They're not the sheets, but you'll just bring them into bed with you because they're so soft. All of that available to you at an extraordinary 40%. Use the promo code 2WMM if you place your order before December 12th. Guaranteed Christmas delivery. And the code will work for you. Again, promo code is 2WMM. Give the gift of comfort that lasts beyond the holidays and carries into a cozy new year. Thank you for your attention to that matter. You know, there's a crazy thing about elections, whether they're exit polls or not. The early exit polls, if there are any, and the early returns shape the mentality of reporters. So last night, if you were watching the returns come in from Tennessee, it was very close. For a while, they were literally tied, in the percentage-wise. And then the Republican ended up winning by almost double digits, by 9 points. Had it been the reverse, had it been 9 points down to 2 or 1, reporters would have seen that as like a big momentum shift. It's irrational because the early returns aren't it's not like a horse race where they're ahead and somebody catches up. It's just where the returns come in. In any event, because it went from a tie in the early returns to a big win for the Republican, not as big as Donald Trump won the district, the Republicans are getting hit less by the media than they otherwise would. Trust me, I'm right about this because I know how the psychology of those people in the media work. And in this case, really helped them. Now, today, the president at the White House is making an announcement at 2:30. Well, at 10 o'clock, he's participating in the internship program. 2:30, he's got an announcement. Not sure what that announcement is, so we'll stand by for that. And, of course, full coverage of that on Two-Way tonight. Vice President, don't know what he's doing. Pete Hegseth, 4:45, is attending the lighting of the very first Department of War Christmas tree. Lots of activity on Capitol Hill. They continue to look for a health care solution. We'll talk about that. The House and Senate Republican conferences are meeting for the lunches on both Republican and Democrat. NATO foreign ministers are in Brussels today. People are making a big deal about the fact that the Secretary of State is not going. His deputy is going. Witkoff and Kushner out of Moscow, meeting somewhere in Europe to brief Zelensky on their talks with Putin. Putin, as we predicted here yesterday, left them waiting for a long time. Didn't start the meeting on time. That's like a old Putin trick. And they went and just had a fancy lunch. And the meeting went past midnight local time. And now they're briefing Zelensky. Still no clarity there. Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S. is testifying in front of Senate Appropriations on this issue of the abduction of Ukrainian children. Luigi Mangione is still in a pretrial hearing here in New York, and the Supreme Court is still hearing cases. All right, let's talk about Tennessee. Here is the Tennessean headline 103. Again, the Republican won. If you look at the coverage, basically everybody says the same thing. Republican Van Epps wins special election in Tennessee's 7th district, Tennessee's first special congressional election in more than 4 decades. That's kind of incredible. The coverage generally says, what's true, which is not a disaster for Republicans, but everybody agrees if this is what happens going forward, it will be a disaster for Republicans. 108, please. This is Matt Whitlock, who's been a guest on this platform before. Here's what he says. This is one of the biggest flashing red light warning signs we've seen yet for Republicans. If every House district in the country shifted left by this amount, about 15 points, again, the gap between what Donald Trump got in the district versus what the Republican got last night, we would be looking at a blue wave far worse than 2018. Matt Whitlock estimates 43 seats flipping. The chair of the DNC, Ken Martin, put this on Twitter, 107A, agreeing with Matt Whitlock. Afton Bain's overperformance is a flashing warning sign for Republicans heading into the midterms. I think that's the same metaphor as Matt Whitlock used. Republicans had to spend millions just to barely hold on to the seat. And there's some blind quotes like in Politico saying, this is a disaster. But obviously we're 11 months away. So let's start. Kristen, what would make Republicans confident that if this very liberal candidate in a very red district shifted things 15 points, what would give Republicans reason to believe that this won't happen in all these other districts where if Democrats have stronger candidates, they could actually take back the House majority quite significantly?
So I'm not totally sold on the theory that a better or different candidate would have done better in the situation on the Democrat side. Obviously, she had so much in her oppo file. She had a lot of crazy things that were said. But I think she also riled up the base. And so if you had someone that was maybe more, dirt road Democrat, would they have done as well in the Nashville area? And things like that. So I'm not totally convinced yet, but I do think it is worth a debate on the Democrat side on whether or not they nominate more Aftons or more Spambergers, and that's what they need to figure out. And frankly, there's not one answer. Every district is going to be different, and that's what both parties really need to understand about the results from last night. Is that you can't just copy and paste and apply this to all the other elections. I mean, this was, if there was ever a not litmus test, but kaleidoscope. I talked to one person last night who said, wow, this was a huge margin blowout for Republicans. And another person with Trump derangement syndrome who said, wow, really close. So, I mean, everyone is going to see what they want out of this. I think for Republicans, if there is a bright side, it would be that, in the last minute, we were able to get out some mid-propensity voters, which we haven't been able to do in the last few rounds of special elections. But I think the bigger warning sign for me is that, there was not low turnout. We had midterm election turnout, which is what we're going to see across the board next year. And we still shifted 13 points in the wrong direction. So that's something that we have to grapple with. This wasn't just, wow, voters aren't turning out. Voters are excited. They're just not ours right now.
Yeah, but see, if Ken Martin, of course, has to say this is all awesome. But if you were staffing him and he said, what wasn't great? Like what about the result wasn't great for us? Is there something you see that you'd warn him about?
I would just warn him about candidate quality, honestly. I mean, I do think, especially coming from Georgia as a Southern Democrat, she just wasn't it. I mean, to call somebody the AOC of anything just does not play with Democrats that exist in that Southeast region. Her past tweets when she was a private citizen with defund the police. I mean, defund the police never gained traction anywhere below the Mason-Dixon line. That was always something that ended up in very deep blue cities as messaging. I think it's candidate quality for every single district. And I do think that people maybe closer to the center do galvanize voters for places that don't feel as deeply blue as in New York City. Like Nashville is a blue, but it just feels like a different kind of deep blue.
Yeah.
And it's crazy she could say, I hate Nashville and I hate country music, and people still came out in Nashville and voted for her. So
Yeah, that is definitely not something you'd want on your resume if you're running in Nashville. Okay, let's talk about her message and then switch to the president. Either of you disagree that to the extent she overperformed, which she did, that it was because she emphasized the economy, healthcare, cost of living, affordability? Do you guys agree that was her strongest message and likely accounts for her success, or not necessarily?
I actually don't think she was that great of a messenger. Every interview I watched with her was really rough. I
Yeah.
actually think growing unpopularity and dissatisfaction with this administration boosted her a lot more than if she was just standing alone. I think if she was running a special election at the top of this year, it would have felt differently than at the bottom of this year when folks are looking to 2026 for like some kind of economic relief.
Kristen, do you think economics played a role in her overperformance?
I think it did. And so I'm going to like what the voters are seeing. A lot of them weren't really seeing her interviews. They're not watching MS Now
Yeah.
or whatever the channel is. They're seeing the wave of advertising that came in the final few weeks. I think it was like 2.3 million to 3.1, almost equal, both parties. And her ads were pretty good. I mean, I watched them and I thought I would run that ad with a Republican in another district. I mean, talking about grocery prices and cost of living. And the key that I think whoever did her ads, I mean, she was a bad candidate, bad interviews, but her ads themselves, they were able to pin it on, and hey, Republicans and Trump don't care about fixing it, which is frankly out of the Trump playbook. It's what he did last year, saying that Harris cares more about all these social issues and not about your pocketbook. And I think her ads did that, which is why she was doing so well, because I mean, at the end of the day, the voters are seeing the paid advertising more than they're seeing her podcast or whatever's like Twitter is not real life. And so they're not seeing all the, rage tweets that the right was doing about her quotes. They were seeing those ads. On the flip side, the hits on her, because they were so plentiful, I think we were almost throwing too much mud at the wall. I think we probably could have killed her a little bit earlier had we honed in on one or two, like when she was saying she was against ICE, when she was against the police. I mean, if you really honed in on one of those and just focused on it, I think that might have been a little bit more effective on the onset, instead of kind of hitting. At some point, voters get overloaded and they don't even start believing what you're telling them.
Yeah.
So I think her advertising is good.
Yeah.
I think my wonder is having a Harris come out. Do you think, Kristen, like Republicans, I just saw a lot of them grasp onto that and they were like, why would she have Harris come out? Do you think Harris was a boon at all? To me, it was really a non-factor. She could have come, she could have not come, but it'll be interesting to see how Dems use Harris, and then also if Republicans will point to it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the president, because every Republican I've talked to in the last couple weeks has talked about their strong desire to have the president talk about affordability and prices, and not just talk about it, but have stuff to talk about and actually do to turn things around. Yesterday in the cabinet meeting, the president, the vice president, and the Treasury Secretary both said happy days are sort of here, but they'll definitely be here next year. They both said the economy would be good next year, which, if it's true, obviously would affect this. Here's what the president said at the cabinet meeting about the economy. Let's start with, my apologies here, 116A, please. This is a New York Times headline on their story about the president and affordability. Trump calls affordability a con job. As his edge on the economy slips, President Trump is growing frustrated as Americans struggle with higher prices and pessimism over the state of the economy. Here's from the Times story quoting the president at the cabinet meeting. Next. After taking off what he claimed were trillions of dollars of investments and other economic accomplishments, Mr. Trump called the issue of affordability, quote, a fake narrative and a con job created by Democrats to dupe the public. Quote, they just say the word, he said. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. They just say it, affordability. Again, there's not a consultant in the world who would tell the president to say this, but the president's going to say what he's going to say. Here's a little bit of this on camera, please. 116C.
But our prices now for energy, but for gasoline are really low. Electricity's coming down. And when that comes down, everything comes down. But the word affordability is a Democrat scam. They say it, and then they go on to the next subject. And everyone thinks, oh, they had lower prices. No, they had the worst inflation in the history of our country.
Okay, there's a Democratic research firm called Navigators that is really one of the best in the country, and they produce high quality work. They do a lot of corporate work, but they're partisan, but they're very very good. And they did a big focus group, and I want to show you some of it, 117A, because it's right on point to how people are feeling about the economy. Headline: Focus Group Report: Working Class Americans and the Affordability Crisis. And this is released this morning. It's a lot of voters across the board, across the country, and some Republicans, some Democrats, et cetera. Let's look at some of the findings from this focus group 117B. Participants are struggling mightily to afford the basics like dog food or energy. They see no real sign of the situation improving. The wealthy are seen as benefiting from a rigged system. Politicians are seen as out of touch. Many view President Trump as particularly out of touch, with his ballroom project as key evidence. Healthcare is seen as a common sense solution, universal healthcare. People are reporting deep economic pain and feelings of helplessness. Here's some quotes from individual voters, 117C. I think the economy is going to tank because we all lose health care starting in January. And most of us, like me, I'm going to lose it in January. What is going to do to the economy? People can't afford to buy anything now. It's going to just kill it. That's a soft Democrat from New Hampshire. Let's look at 2, please. I'm scared. I'm scared of losing our health care, of him not getting the care that he needs, and me not being able to provide for my family, even though I went to school and got a career to do so. That's an independent from New Hampshire. One more, 117F. I find everything is higher priced around here. I find work, but I'm looking for higher paying jobs. That's been very discouraging. Unemployment's up higher than it's been in 4 years, and I don't see it getting better. Again, another weak Democrat from Michigan. And then a bunch of quotes about, this is G, please, a bunch of quotes about the president being out of touch in the view of voters. We have someone who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth. If I'm an independent, how about a ballroom, $1 billion? How much was it? 5 billion, 3 billion or something? Do we really need a ballroom? That's from a Maine independent. You get the point. People are hurting. And yeah, see, if you were advising President Trump and he just continues to say affordability is a scam, what would you tell him?
I tell him not everybody grew up like he did. And so affordability is a real word. He's never had to think about the cost of anything. And it's interesting looking at the remarks from those folks, because this is what I thought from the moment he came down the escalator all those years ago: is how is this man who comes from a very privileged background, who's only lived in places like New York City, going to relate to the everyday American? And look, credit where credit is due. He has done a pretty good job of figuring out some kind of way for the everyman to believe that he is the everyman. But it almost feels kind of like the buck is stopping here, and the East Wing renovation is the tipping point. And I would say, maybe we don't have to gold plate every single thing, and some things are fine as they are, and we don't do a big renovation when the economy is faltering.
Kristen, you worked for Governor Youngkin, who's not as rich as Donald Trump, but pretty rich. But you dressed him in vests, or maybe he just chose his own vest. But he went to supermarkets, and he seemed not to a lot of voters, at least, to be out of touch. We'll never know if he could win re-election, because Virginia has a crazy law where you can't run for re-election as governor. But same question to you. Like, I know Republicans are frustrated that the president won't focus on this. He won't focus on this. I mean, he just never. That's not his thing. But what can Republicans do, independent of the president, to demonstrate that they're not out of touch and that they care about affordability and they don't think it's a scam or a hoax?
Right. Well, you have to humanize affordability. You have to personalize it, because at some point, everyone's cost of living is different, and hitting success is different for everyone. My idea of living comfortably is a lot different than the person in the room next to me. And so we all have different ideas. And so there's never one standard where it's good enough. And so that's one thing that Governor Youngkin was able to do when he ran. It was going to the supermarkets, literally checking out people at the counter, saying, I'm here with you. I see, wow, that price of eggs is too high. Let's get it down. And, I think that what Trump said on face value is, you kind of step back. But when you hear what he's saying, he's right. He's saying the word itself, to shout the word, is not enough. And that's what he was able to do. Why so many people, when he came down the gold escalator, flocked to him, because he went to where they were. He went to their small towns, and he talked about the issues that they cared about. And that's what Governor Youngkin was able to do too, where you hear a leader, someone running, and say, wow, they care about the problems that I'm facing, so I'm going to trust them to fix them. And so now I think we have to do, even the president he hasn't really been out on the road that much. He's been a lot of foreign policy. I think if we see him, I predict he gets on the road either to Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania in the next 5 days, week or so. And I think you see him go back to some of those blue collar areas to talk about cost. And I'm sure he'll talk about, 100 million other things. But to make those points and to go back to where they are, they're just feeling a little bit forgotten. And that's was most surprising about this poll to me is that, that was what he was so good at. So all Republicans now running, it's not enough to just say we care about affordability. Go into your community and find what the issue is. Groceries are the easiest way to do that because it's something that affects everyone every day.
Yeah.
But to do gas, you can do a number of other things.
Yeah, I see a lot of Republicans I talk to are really focused on State of the Union now. They want to see policy developed. They want to see a big speech. In the olden days, the president would go on the road. They'd leak stuff in advance of the State of the Union. They'd do the speech. They'd go on a road. The cabinet would go out. The last two presidents, the current one and President Biden, got a little bit away from that. Is that an old-fashioned thing because we communicate in different ways, or would the Trump people be smart to build a lot around State of the Union?
They should build a whole tour. I mean, if I'm that, I think it's.
Get on.
I'm old-fashioned. So I think he drives news and he drives headlines when he's out in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that the camera that the country is seeing is him sitting in the office every day and talking about things that they don't care about. Somalia and that stuff, it affects and the base gets riled up. But to the average American, it would probably be really good to see him, in a suburb of Detroit or somewhere.
Back in McDonald's,
back in McDonald's, back in the garbage truck.
Right.
That was a good play. When he goes on site, it's a much stronger play. You're right than when he's behind the Resolute desk for 3 hours. And a lot of times, I think the affordability word is losing a lot of its meaning. The same with socialism. It's if we scream these words all the time, but there's no actual do outs from any of it. It's what really does socialism mean? And people aren't going to vote for the other guy just because you say socialism is bad. So same with affordability.
We also haven't seen him do no garbage truck, no McDonald's, no broy podcasts. Go on a broy podcast and talk about affordability. All these things are being talked about by allies of the White House. Not clear to me whether the White House is interested in them. You talk about images of the president. Yesterday on this program, Hogan and Ashley both took the over when I said, how long would the cabinet meeting be? 90 minutes. They both took over. And Hogan said, I'm taking the over because the president wants to seem vigorous, because that New York Times story got under his skin saying, he's old and he's tired and he's lost a step. So the cabinet meeting went on for quite some time. But also it went on quite some time with the president dozing, 1:15. Watch closely. Again, if you're watching on if you're listening on the podcast, you're not going to see this. But the president's, you'll see, he's closing his eyes. Now, as someone who's you can kill the audio. As someone who's fallen asleep on live television and on live radio interviews, I'm very sympathetic to this. The staff should give him a Diet Coke. But again, if you're just listening, you're not watching, he's doing the thing you do when you're super tired. Now, the night before, he was up till 1 a.m. on Truth Social, and then back on Truth Social at 5 a.m. So is he tired? I think he's just got bad sleep hygiene. I don't think it means he's falling apart physically, but this is, this shouldn't be, particularly, again, if Hogan was right that he wanted to use the cabinet meeting to show what his predecessor called vigor. Vigor. Let me see. Is this something you look at those pictures and say those should be in a Democratic ad mocking him, or no big deal, or what?
They might throw some Biden stuff back at us, so I don't really know what the net positive there is.
Yeah.
I would say the room is small. There's tons of people in it. It's incredibly hot, and the meeting is going on for close to 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone stays awake. Everybody on the cabinet's going to stay awake because they've been working on this pitch all week long because they knew the meeting was coming. This is their time before the president. But for him, this is just another day talking in front of the media for a couple of hours. So it makes sense he kind of spaced a bit.
Kristen, you ever staff anybody who falls asleep in a meeting on camera?
Yes, but you do need to, in advance when they're going to do it, so you don't set them up to be in front of camera. That's a staff. If you know that this is the 5th time that's happening, don't put them in the situation. Don't have the cameras there.
I totally agree. Or shorten it, or get them a Diet Coke. I've like I said, I've fallen asleep on television, but not while I was drinking Diet Coke. There was no like Jerry Lewis thing where I'm dribbling the Diet Coke down my shirt because like even I can't fall asleep drinking a Diet Coke, and the man likes Diet Coke. Anyway, worth watching because I don't think the president's going to like that video on this show or anywhere else. Fed chair. The president says he's made his choice. Rather than doing an announcement in December, now he says it'll be early next year. The Wall Street Journal, 2 days running, have said it's going to be Kevin Hassett, the head of the National Economic Council. The president says there's one choice. Then he also said in the cabinet meeting that Kevin's one of the candidates. So you don't need to be a master logician to say that it's probably Kevin. A lot of sources of the Journal are saying it is. He does have opposition. There are people who do not want it to be Kevin Hassett. I can tell you that. Who some like him personally, but don't want it to be him. And the markets seem fine with Kevin Hassett. The president, I think, I know based on my reporting, the president wants his person there. He doesn't want to pick someone he doesn't know. He doesn't want a Comey rerun or a what's the name of the guy there now? Jay Powell rerun. So, Kristen, does it matter who he picks? Like the White House and the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg spend so much time on this, but from a policy point of view or a PR point of view, voter point of view, does this matter as much as some people seem to think?
Not directly. I think, watching all the different members of the economic, advising group, Kevin was clearly auditioning for this for months. I mean, he was on every single TV show. He was doing a great job. I mean, I don't say there's a negative. And he is someone that is clearly going to do what the president wants. So in that sense, yes, because we're going to see policy changes that will then, affect PR and the voters and things like that. But the actual pick itself, I think if you walk out on the street and ask someone who the Fed chair is, they couldn't tell you.
Yeah. Well, you answered Pop-Up Morning Joe because Roger Marshall's talking about healthcare, which is our next topic, and we don't see a lot of Republican senators on MS now. So, while we pop that up, you have some thoughts on the Fed chair?
He doesn't need aides and experts to give him the right choice. He wants the person who is like proven to be very loyal and good at the do-outs. And so, I mean, this Jay Powell thing has been such a headache for him. It makes sense he chooses somebody who's a bit of a yes man.
Yeah. Okay, let's listen to Roger Marshall, Republican of Kansas.
We heard Secretary of Defense Hegseth offer his explanation.
Different topic. We'll see what he says on this.
As to what happened. You voted to confirm the secretary back in January. Some of your Republican colleagues have called into question what happened there. We know there's going to be some hearings on the Hill in the next couple of days, some closed-door testimony. Do you still believe Secretary of Defense Hegseth is the right man for the job? What concerns, if any, do you have about what you learned about the September strike?
Yeah, I stand beside Secretary Hegseth. I'm reminded of something
All right,
President
dump out of
Eisenhower
this.
once said.
Anyway, he was on
earlier
earlier to talk about health care. There's bipartisan talks in both the House and the Senate on health care to see if they can get a deal before Christmas. I've long said this is a fantasy. That's not the way health care policy works. And there's also an attempt to get a discharge petition. Again, there's no time for a discharge petition. So are either of you bullish on the prospect of a bipartisan health care deal, let's say before January 20th, because I can't imagine it's going to happen before January 1st. Are either of you bullish on a bipartisan healthcare deal?
I'm not before January 20th.
No. So what's going to happen to the subsidies?
I think that the best thing that we can, I think they're going to try and punt it again. I mean, without Trump or, someone stepping up to bring everyone together to have that deal, I think there's going to have to be an arrangement to try to punt to then work through it for the next few months. But I don't see how, we're talking about decades of opposition on critical infrastructure in American healthcare. I mean, this is not just like a tax rate or, tax cut. We're talking like literally changing the infrastructure of how healthcare works here. And so I don't see it getting, I just see it getting done in 2 months. I do think they'll try to punt the subsidies.
Yeah. But even punting the subsidies is hard because of abortion in the House. So it's not even clear to me how that they could get any kind of extension. Do you think we'll see any sort of deal, small, medium, large?
No, Congress is like a poor student, always ill prepared, asking for more time.
Yeah. All right. We'll see what happens. All right. A couple more topics, and then to your questions, please raise your hand if you're here on the platform. You want to get in the conversation. As I said in the day book, Putin's meeting with Witkoff and Kushner was inconclusive, according to the Russians. Not a ton of reading out from the U.S. side. Marco Rubio on Fox last night basically said, it's up to Putin. We got to see what happens. But he's right. Here's the BBC headline: Kremlin signals no Ukraine breakthrough after Putin talks with U.S. Rubio, said, if Putin wants a deal, there'll be a deal. But he's right that we are closer to a deal. The world's closer to a deal than we've been. The Europeans continue to be unhappy. Yemisi, on this one, bullish, bearish? Do you see a deal coming together or no?
No, I don't. And I think they should really hurry it up, because I think the American people are getting foreign policy fatigue hard. I mean, I know both of these countries are tired, and obviously the populations within them are in a much tougher situation than we are. But I mean, it is just getting really, really hard for people in America to care and be as sympathetic about Ukraine as we once were.
Kristen.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's just so off brand. I mean, Trump was that's where you see this disgruntled vein and with some of the people in the base, because they just want to focus on domestic and American. So I think they're getting fatigued with all the deals. Now it's two different. I mean, it doesn't have to be just the White House or Trump. I mean, like, have someone step up, either in Congress, like other people need to step up and focus outside of it. But I don't see it coming together. I think Putin doesn't want it. I mean, it doesn't seem like he wants it without him at the table. I don't see it happening.
Okay. And then does the U.S. walk away?
I think so. I just think that, I mean, I thought Trump was going to walk away 3 months ago. He just seemed like he was washing his hands of it. And frankly, he's getting so much heartburn, within the party on it. I mean, there's no upside for him now. I mean, for the world, there's upside for sure. But I just think right now, the fatigue, there's just not a whole lot of moral, encouragement to keep going.
Okay. One more topic, and then to your question. So again, if you want in on the conversation, please raise your hand. So I think that Secretary Hegseth is out of the danger he was in, at least for now. This, as was reported by Hans Nichols here on 2A Tonight last night, the Signalgate report by the IG has gone to the Secretary's office, and it's going to the Hill in a classified version, and there'll be a redacted version. So there may be some peril for him there. We don't know all the facts of what happened in that strike, the so-called double tap strike. But yesterday, between the New York Times reporting about the chronology of the Secretary's involvement and the Secretary's strong embrace from Donald Trump at the cabinet meeting and his own chronology, if you believe, you want to believe the sort of the best case, it's possible that Secretary Hegseth said do the mission. He didn't monitor every decision that was made. The inline commander did, and the inline commander was not trying to kill those two people, allegedly. He was trying to destroy the ship, and they were killed along in that mission. That chronology is plausible. Now, we haven't seen everything. We don't know everything. Here's something on a tweet on 111A, please. I forgot to remind myself to look up who Chris Marr is. Does somebody tell me?
Oh yeah, he used to work in the Biden White House, and then he moved over to the DOD to be a spokes.
So he's an experienced official.
Yeah.
Here's what he tweeted: a very simple solution for Hegseth, and quote, the most transparent Pentagon ever, would be to lay out in detail what exactly happened, when, and on what authority. It's absolutely possible to do that, and it hasn't happened yet, which begs the obvious question: why? It's true. There are still some details not known. Some of the details may become known tomorrow when Mr. Bradley, Admiral Bradley, goes to Capitol Hill and speaks to members of Congress about his role. The White House continues, and Secretary Hegseth continues to say, Bradley did this, but what he did was just fine with them. Here is Mark Warner. I think Yemisi knows Mr. Warner, or your former boss. Here's Mark Warner, a Democrat senator from Virginia, who's a key player on intelligence and national security issues, saying on Morning Joe what answers he would like to hear from Admiral Bradley. 112, please.
I'm going to want to get answers on what did Pete Hegseth order? Why haven't we seen the whole unedited video? If there's nothing inappropriate here, you could have cleared this up without the Admiral coming in. He's got a great reputation. I respect him. I want to get the truth, and I'm not sure we've had the truth from Hegseth yet. Remember, this is an administration that has treated the uniformed military with unprecedented disrespect when they were all brought to get a pep rally in front of Hegseth and Trump. This is an administration that's fired, uniformed generals from the head of the NSA, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I think in many ways, the uniformed military may help save us from this president and his lame people like Hegseth, because I think their commitment is to the Constitution and obviously not to Trump, and I expect Bradley to adhere to that.
So there's a profile of Bradley in the New York Times today. It's pretty good. An interesting career. Been a very low-profile guy. Not clear if he'll speak publicly tomorrow, although I talked to one Capitol Hill source who says they don't expect to hear anything from him publicly. So, Yemisi, regarding Secretary Hegseth, Bradley, Admiral Bradley, and this is general story, what are you looking for next?
I'm looking to see where people place the ultimate blame here. I mean, I think the president has really pushed it off to Hegseth to you figure this out and deal with it, and him deferring to Hegseth a lot in the cabinet meeting, which he usually doesn't do, says that this is really going to be all in his camp. It's going to be interesting to see where the members lay the blame. And I don't think someone like Senator Warner is not going to place it on the admiral. He's going to hold the responsibility to Hegseth. But I think the admiral is going to have to really make the case here for why he did the second hit.
Kristen.
I'm going to be watching if Hegseth and team can lay this out in a transparent way to calm Republicans. Because I mean, privately and internally, I think you hear some folks saying, "Oh, come on, like just fix it, like make it, like you're not handling it the right way." And a lot of these just are self-inflicted. Like just put it out there, be transparent. To that was a great point. And you've seen that, I think, in a few other things, that it's almost like the handling of it is worse than whatever the allegation is. And so I'll be curious to see how they need to be very tight, very succinct, and very clear as to what's happening. No ambiguity. And I think that will help Republicans rally around Hegseth and team. And I think it'll help this go away.
Okay.
I don't think Hegseth gets fired either.
Yeah. All right. Well, to that point, we've got what John McLaughlin would call mandatory exit question. Yes or no? Yes or no? Is there anything that could be in the Signalgate report that would cause Hegseth to lose his job? Anything? If it said he moved sensitive classified information improperly to Signal and endangered American lives, if the IG found that, is there anything? Yes or no? Yemisi?
No.
Kristen?
No.
The correct answer is no. You're both right. All right. A quick word from another sponsor, and then to your questions. Please raise your hand if you're here on the platform, would like to be in on the conversation. I'll reminder, although I do not read the chat, I glance at it. No smack in the chat, either here on the platform or on Two Ways YouTube channel. Please, no smack in the chat. Hogan isn't here, but in honor of Hogan, I'll remind you that right now you can get $10 off your first order and free shipping from the good folks at Poncho. PonchoOutdoors.com/2WMM. $10 off. Poncho has you covered. Denim jeans, the flannels. Hogan likes the kind of the well-fitting shirts because he's not in the gym all those hours to wear something that's not well-fitting. And their stuff just fits great. Hogan and I can both tell you it all fits right. It's got great style, comfort, performance. Again, go to PonchoOutdoors.com/2WMM. They give you free shipping, free returns, free exchanges to make sure you get the right fit. They have a great sizing chart on there, though, so you'll likely not have to return a thing. Poncho stands by every shirt. They'll make it right if it's not your favorite. Again, go right now to PonchoOutdoors.com/2WMM. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for your questions for our two fantastic guest co-hosts. Brennan, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Kristen and Yemisi.
Hello, I'm calling in from Rhode Island. I have a two-part question. Which executive branch agency has the Trump administration got the most control over? I know in the first administration, a lot of times they would just ignore his orders and wait him out. So I'm wondering on that. And then in relation to that, which third or fourth level staffer, I'm thinking people like Eldridge Colby, is really making an impact in their respective agencies.
All right. So the first one is easier in the sense that it's objective. You're saying of all the agencies and cabinet departments, which one is the most wholly owned subsidiary of the White House? Right? Correct. Okay. Let's answer that one. Kristen?
I think all of them. I mean, right now, I just don't. I think that the people this time around, the administration is, they've already been through it the first term with defectors. They were not tolerating it this time around. So I think everything from the FBI to DOJ to DHS, I mean, literally every branch or every department is in lockstep, which is frankly what you need. I mean, that's how leaders can be effective.
Would you say even HHS is in lockstep?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a little loosey goosey over there. Yemisi, would you single out one as being particularly under the thumb of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
I mean, the Department of War, they're the only ones that changed their name. So that might be the most in lockstep I've ever seen. Also, because his detractors from the first admin, a lot of them were military personnel. So it's interesting to see his biggest supporters now being the Department of War.
All right. I hate to do a drop mic moment, but I think I got you both beat. It's the State Department, because the National Security Advisor is the Secretary of State. He doesn't even go to the State Department anymore, practically. So I'd say the State Department. And then number two, Brendan's second question, a little trickier because he said third level. So the question is, who's third level? You guys have, either of you have a candidate for somebody who's not necessarily super visible, who is in fact super influential?
Yeah, I think I don't think he's third level, but I think Dan Driscoll over at Department of War is, I mean, he's a bit higher than that, but he's just slowly maybe leaving from 3 to 2 levels. Really stepping up and leading. And so that would be one, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yemisi.
All I can think of is the OMB director.
Yeah. I'd say Harmeet Dillon, who's the head of the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department, is super influential and very well liked the administration. She seems to have a fair amount of both sway and independence under the circumstances. Brendan, 2 great questions. Thank you for that. Tell folks how you learned about two-way.
After the election, I was just consuming any and all post-election material I could find, and you popped up on YouTube suggestions.
Yeah. And if the president saw you on the program and called you up and said, Brendan, what should I be doing different on the economy? What would you tell him?
I'd tell him to increase supply in whichever way he deems fit.
Supply of anything? Or you got something in mind in particular?
I would say gas, because that affects everything.
Yeah. Okay. More gas. Brendan, thank you. Really appreciate you joining. All right. Moving on. Joshua's holding up a sign, which I can't read, but it intrigues me. Oh, baby and puppy. Joshua knows the rules. Joshua, unmute, but you put up or shut up. Let's see. Not just a piece of paper. Let's see the baby and the puppy, please. I see photos, but I want to see. Or was that just a bluff?
That was absolutely a bluff, and it clearly worked.
All right, Joshua. I'm going to subtract points for lying, but give you points for gumption.
Great. Thank you very much. That leaves me even. The Hegseth issue, it seems to me that we've already been through 4 excuses at this point, 4 excuses. The first one was that it was fake news and it didn't happen. I think the second excuse was, oh, hell yeah, we kill narco terrorists and that's what we do. And we're going to put out a Franklin meme. I think then it was self-defense, and now it's apparently the second strike was because the boat was a hazard to other vessels. Now it's not Pete Hegseth's fault; it's the admiral's fault, and I'm not defending narco terrorists. I would never defend narco terrorists, but I will defend the rule of law. And I just think it's absolutely absurd the amount of chaos that this administration engages in. I would have no problem with with anything that we're doing in the Caribbean, not anything, just sort of hyperbole. If we would only get congressional authorization to do so, we don't need a declaration of war, but we do need some sort of AUMF. And now, what have we done with Venezuela? Has Trump declared a no-fly zone over Venezuela essentially?
Only on social media. Kristen will tell you, Truth Social is not real life.
Right. But so how far away is a Trump truth from a Trump policy?
Yeah. Sometimes they're indistinguishable. Joshua, you've raised literally 100 issues there. I'm not being hyperbolic. Really important constitutional issues, political issues, PR issues. And I'll let my colleagues address them first, and then I will. But I'm not saying that to be critical. I'm saying you've raised a bunch of really important stuff, and I appreciate any opportunity we have here to have debates about these issues because they're too little discussed. These are serious stuff. And one issue, of course, is Congress absolutely for 50 years giving up its constitutional, not just obligation and right, but responsibility to follow the Constitution and be the one in charge of war making. So, Yemisi, first, you can pick up on any of the 100 things.
I mean, it's
Joshua
politically
raised.
convenient, right?
Yeah.
It's politically convenient for Congress to do so because they don't have to run on anything that they do.
Correct.
They can run on, against the president.
Yeah. Okay. So again, you can pick any of the 100 you wish. Yemisi, go ahead.
I will say, I think Democrats are constantly in the cycle of Trump does something egregious, Dems get outraged, lots of speeches on the floor. Trump ends up doing what he said he was going to do at the top of the day. And so Jeffries not really being interested in bringing articles of impeachment to the floor and saying he's not even going to go in that direction when it comes to Hegseth, because he already knows that Johnson is not going to bring the articles of impeachment to the floor. He already knows that Johnson is going to follow whatever Trump wants to do. And so for this whole situation with Venezuela, with the boats, to me, it is Trump doing something absolutely ridiculous, but Dems having no real positioning power here. It's just, I just think we're going to see floor speeches for the next week. There's going to be a classified briefing with members. They'll exit. They'll go to the reporters and go, what we learned is very concerning, or we really need to follow up on next steps. And then I don't think anything actually happens out of this.
Kristen.
I agree. I mean, just for the political theater part of it, Dems do find themselves in a trap where it's always outrage. Nothing, that's kind of Trump's game with them, I think. But this debate, just in general, is valid, and it's not new. So we've been having, go back to just the Iraq War and the Bush administration, and then, many years before that, this has constantly been a intellectual tension between, folks who are on the more libertarian side, more, pro hard defense. Democrat, Republican. So this debate will go ongoing. I don't know the right answer to it. I think that every situation is different, but I do think this is a new phase of that debate, right? That we saw, that we had. Frankly, that we had when Obama was using drones in the Middle East during his term. So literally every president has this tension, which is good and healthy. I think we need that, check on power and back and forth. But ultimately, the president's job is to keep the country safe. And so having the debate is important, and I think keeps us going in the right direction. And I think I don't know the answer where we'll unfold here, but I do know this is the next kind of phase of that.
Yeah. Joshua, I'll resist my urge to address all 100 issues you raised and just say this. I'm for the facts and the truth, and I'm for constitutional order, and I'm not for war crimes. And your characterization of the stages of Pete Hegseth's explanations is absolutely right. And it's on the face of it, it's clear those explanations are not consistent in the sense of they've changed. He's emphasized different things. But I will say that based on the reporting of the New York Times, based on what the secretary said yesterday, and based on all other available facts, everything he said is arguably true. It's not definitely true, but there's nothing that contradicts any of his four explanations if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. So when he says the Washington Post story was fake, he wasn't saying there was no second strike. He was saying their characterization of his role was not accurate. And if you look at the Washington Post, the New York Times reporting, and you look at the secretary's partial chronology yesterday, the Washington Post story, its emphasis, the way the Washington Post story was framed, would not be accurate, because the Washington Post story suggested that it was his order that caused the admiral to do the second tap. And that's not currently contradicted by what we know. So all I'd say is I'm for holding all government officials accountable. I'm not saying the secretary's been a model leader on this. We just don't know what all the facts are. But I think it's wrong to just go with the flow of saying he's lying about this and he's evading responsibility, because we just don't know enough about how all this went down. And based on what he said, so far uncontradicted, he might have a better story to tell than he's told for himself so far.
For sure. If I may close with just by saying that, the administration is very good with their, strategically ambiguous statements. And I think, Mark, you would agree with that. And that's a political strategy that they've taken. I saw a statistic where the Coast Guard said, which obviously drug interdiction is traditionally a Coast Guard function. The Coast Guard said that about 75% of the boats, of the vessels that they stop are drug traffickers.
Yeah.
Well, that leaves 25% that aren't drug traffickers, that might be illegal immigrants, that might be fishermen, and the Navy is not equipped to do the mission of the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Right. This coming from Marine. All right.
Yeah.
The Navy is not equipped to do that mission. We can't just engage in extrajudicial, killings if that's what's going on.
Yeah.
I condemned it with Obama, and I condemn it now. I share
Joshua, I share your sensibility about this, and I hope there's a big, robust national debate about it for this president and anyone else who wants to engage in this kind of activity. Thank you, Joshua. Ellen, welcome in. Thank you for being part of Two-Way. Great to see you back. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Yemisi and for Kristen.
I am in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I kind of following up with what you guys were saying about Hegseth. The Wall Street Journal this morning had the article about Hegseth saying that the military, he wants to change the direction of the military, being more confrontational, not having to worry about having to go to jail or court-martial, whatever.
Really good story that summarizes his long-running position on this stuff.
Yeah. So my thought is, like, is that true? Is that an accurate description of what's happening in the military? Like, when he brought in all of those generals and he did his big speech, he talked about, like, there's going to be no beardos, no dudes in dresses. But I really don't picture a bunch of Corporal Clingers, like, running around the military. So, so now when I read that article, I'm like, well, is that true? And so I was wondering if anyone knew.
Yeah. Ladies, either of you want to address that?
I think there were definitely occasions where that was true. I don't think, they have to have at least one, you've seen reports of, particularly, I think, where it was, the most people got upset is when, money went towards some of the, if you were going through certain treatments, things like that, that were very woke. I think when money got involved, people got very upset. So that was kind of those first stories that came up. But ultimately, I do think in the last 10 years, particularly under, Obama and Biden, there was a different approach to the military, a softening, if you will, just as a PR perception. And I think that is more to what Hegseth is speaking to. It's kind of, it's kind of this alpha, which frankly for the military, I don't see the problem with it. I do think that we were, enrollment was down, recruitment was down. I mean, the overall approach to the military under some administrations was not celebratory of the strength that it needs. And so I think that globally, that's what Hegseth's talking about.
I think we'll have fatties back in the military. I think Hegseth will be out in a couple of years, and whatever culture change he's made will just reverse with the next president.
Ellen, I'll just say there's been some of that for sure, and there'll be more. But this question of rules of engagement, super curious to see if we ever do see what the lawyers said about this particular mission, because I just keep saying, whether you're the Secretary of Defense or you're an admiral, you're not pulling the trigger on these things without a lawyer signing off on it. And I still want to see what the lawyers said. It doesn't mean the lawyers are to blame, have all the responsibility, but they do bear a lot of the responsibility on the question of is it legal? And then of course the question is, do they do something different than what the lawyer authorized? And we'll just have to see. Ellen, grateful to you. Thank you. Thank you for being on. Quick word for one more sponsor. This is from our friends at Brickhouse Sale. Right now, extraordinary 30% off on all their items. You don't need a promo code here. 30% off. Just go to brickhousesale.com. For the end of the year here, for yourself or for others who want to be healthier, lose weight, for instance, with their lean products, weight loss through doctor-developed products that don't require an injection of any sort. Lose weight the right way with Field of Greens, super fruit and vegetable drinks. that can make you healthier, and creatine developed specifically for women to look and feel better. All their products on Brickhouse Nutrition available now. Cyber Monday sale. Visit brickhousesale.com. Save 30%. Again, brickhousesale.com for 30% off everything on the site.
Mark,
for yourself or for others. Yes, ma'am.
That felt very anti-GLP when you said without injection.
I'm very anti-GLP to tell you the truth. I don't want to offend any members of the community who like having flabby skin on their faces, but I find it to be super questionable how much people are putting in this. Now, if you've got a health issue that requires you to lose weight, then of course. But if it's just for cosmetic purposes, because you don't want to have discipline on your own, I just see too many side effects of it. Do you guys not see that in people you know? Gastro issues, skin issues. You don't see that?
I think there's more unknown, right? I just feel like there's things we don't even know yet.
But exactly. But there are unknowns we don't know yet. But I see knowns. I see knowns of people in my own life who I have a friend who also says nothing feels being thin feels better than anything tastes. I think that's what he says.
Nothing tastes as good as
yeah, like that. Nothing tastes as good as being skinny, right? But again, just go to the gym an extra half an hour and stop eating processed foods and fake sugar, and do it that way. It's possible. All this stuff is just, I don't know. I just always go back to that episode of The Simpsons where it's in the future and somebody walks by and these two people have their eyes soldered shut, and they said, "What happened to them?" And they say, "Well, they got LASIK surgery." It's just like 50 years ago. It's just like there's not enough known. Not enough known. All right, let's see if we can sneak Wickham in here before we go. Although Wickham seems to have left, and now there's an elephant there. Wickham, are you there? No, just the elephant. Beautiful animal. All right, no Wickham. Professor Kenny, you'll close us out with the benediction. There you go.
I wasn't expecting to come in. By the way, great cast right now. Really enjoying the show.
Thank you, sir.
So I guess I'll go to Kristen for this one. So Kristen, do you believe that there is any way Trump is going to be able to be convinced that he has to sell the American people that there is an affordability problem?
That's what we call the $64,000 question.
Yeah, I know you got the answer, Kristen. Give everybody the answer.
If that's the question, I don't think so. I think you have to phrase the question to him differently, and show him, what he can do and get a positive return. I mean, I really do think they put him on the road in the next week or so, and he's there and everyone's cheering for him, and he feels like, I think he's going to double down on lowering the price of groceries, and Christmas gifts are going to be cheaper this year and you can buy 3 instead of 2. I think we'll see some of that.
Yeah, he better do that in the next 6 days because Christmas is around the corner.
All right, Professor, grateful to you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Mark.
Grateful to you. All right, let me tell you about a bunch of stuff coming up here on the two-way platform later today. I gotta look at my notes here. I don't have them memorized, folks. Citizen McCain at noon. Megan has a spectacular guest, one of America's leading voices on all matters. Thank you, Yemisi, for doing double duty. Yemisi will join Megan at noon Eastern time. At 6 o'clock Eastern time, full coverage of everything that's happened between now and then. I'll be on Katie Balls of the Times of London with her extra posh accent. Sounds like a classier Lady Mary. Katie Balls will join me. We'll talk about everything that's going on. And then right after 2-way tonight at 6 Eastern, starting at 7 Eastern, our friend Bridget Fedesi is on. Here's a preview. Number 4, please.
How much do you monitor your kids with tracking location software or cameras? Does it make them feel more secure knowing that you can always locate them, or do they hate it? Are kids today growing up with no expectation of privacy? How would you feel about letting your kids roam loose with no tracking the way we used to? Back in my day, we didn't have tracking devices in our pockets. This week, we're talking about parental surveillance with our guest, the great Lenore Skenazy, founder of the Free Range Kids Movement. Join me, Bridget Fetisi, on Real America Wednesday, December 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. We will be live discussing this. You can register to join the conversation at 2way.tv/Bridget Zoom, or you can simply watch the episode at Real America Fetisi on YouTube. See you then.
All right, what she said. Again, Yemisi with Megan at noon. I'll be on at 6 with Katie Balls, and then Bridget at 7. Tomorrow morning on this program, 23 hours from now, Kristen will be back. We bid farewell for now to Yemisi, and Haima Moore will be here joining Kristen, guest co-hosting. So we look forward to that. Thank you both. Kristen, see you tomorrow. Yemisi, see you at noon with Megan. Very grateful to you both for spending the hour with us.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. And thank you all for watching, being part of the two-way community. We'll see you tomorrow right here. Same bad time, same bad channel. If it's 9 o'clock Eastern time, it's time for the morning meeting. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you at 6.